Brexit chaos, Brexiteers versus Remainers, Tory rebels claim personal assurances from May. Speaking on BBC Radio 4 Today programme, Conservative MP Nicky Morgan argued Theresa May's new promise to give Parliament a final say on Brexit was a clear assurance Dominic Grieve's amendment to the Brexit bill will finally be given the appropriate consideration, which has outraged Leave voters who voiced their fury on social media. The prominent Remainer dismissed Solicitor General Robert Buckland's claim there had been no promise of a meaningful vote from the Prime Minister but rather just a promise of further discussions on Mr. Grieve's amendment. Ms. Morgan said, "This is something that is obviously going to be further discussed between the government and Dominic Grieve and those of us who feel strongly about this amendment. That's the way these things happen. Part of the reason we had the meeting with the Prime Minister and the Chief Whip where the Prime Minister gave us her personal assurance, is because we have had undertakings given at the dispatch box before that haven't then been fulfilled." So, although Robert was trying to be very helpful from the dispatch box in the House of Commons chambers yesterday, it was the Prime Minister's personal assurance that was very important to us and she has given us that in those discussions on how we are going to build on the amendment that has been approved by the House of Commons will start today. Conservative MP Sarah Wollaston also praised the Prime Minister over her latest concession made to Tory rebels on Brexit and claimed it was now up to the government to come back to Parliament with a concrete scenario MPs will be able to vote on. One Twitter user wrote, "Remainers are out in force telling us how the MPs have taken back control." Wollaston on BBC Breakfast and Nicky Morgan on BBC R4. Stereo moaning. Ms. Wollaston argued the House of Lords could vote down the government's next draft of Mr. Grieve's amendment and put rebels' original position back on the table. She said, "We don't feel that was a meaningless promise at all. The point is if that doesn't translate now into an amendment that we're comfortable with the Lords will be able to prop back the amendment that was contentious yesterday. I think it's very likely that would pass. The onus is now on the government and we will approach that in a very constructive spirit because we would much rather reach agreements on this but we have to be absolutely clear that this process isn't finished yet and there is an opportunity in the Lords for the amendment to be back on the table that Dominic didn't press to a vote yesterday. It will be down to the government to come back to Parliament not just with a statement that we can do nothing about, but with something that we can vote on to say whether we're happy or not. That's the important difference here. The crux of this is will Parliament have a meaningful final vote or will it just be a meaningless final vote? And the purpose of this is to protect us from crashing out with no deal on a complete cliff edge and all the chaos that would ensue which we believe would be very harmful not just for the economy but for things that really matter to people in their everyday lives. Mr. Grieve secured shock concessions from the Prime Minister to avoid an embarrassing defeat for the government and stated he is certain Tory rebels will be able to get what we want from the Brexit process. Speaking on BBC Newsnight, Mr. Grieve commented on the government's concessions, stating, "There was bound to be a discussion about the amendment, and that discussion was positive. It was so positive it enabled quite a large number of my colleagues to vote to remove the Lords' amendments and substitute the government's amendments." Mr. Grieve's amendment to secure a vote of Mrs. May's final Brexit deal was voted down by 324 votes to 298 after many Tory rebels finally decided to back the government.